You're either for me or against me.
If that is the choice, then I am against you.
Ben-Hur, 1959, the chariot race that echoed through eternity. Some films are more than movies, they're monuments. Ben-Hur, 1959, isn't just a cinematic epic, it's a thunderous declaration of what Hollywood once dared to dream. In an age before computer graphics, before green screens and digital trickery, this film roared into existence with raw ambition, sheer scale, and an emotional core that still pulses more than 6 decades later. Released during the golden age of Hollywood, Ben-Hur was the most expensive film ever made at the time, with a budget soaring over $15 million. Director William Wyler orchestrated an army of over 50,000 extras, massive sets built on Roman soil at Cinecittà Studios in Italy, and a now legendary chariot race scene that took 5 weeks to film and became one of the most iconic sequences in movie history. No special effects. No shortcuts. Just dust, sweat, and relentless artistry. At the heart of the story is Judah Ben-Hur, a Jewish prince betrayed by his childhood friend Messala, cast into slavery, and stripped of everything. But from chains and agony emerges a tale not only of revenge but of redemption. This transformation, from rage to forgiveness, from darkness to light, is what makes Ben-Hur a spiritual epic, not just a historical one. Leading the charge was Charlton Heston, whose performance as Judah burned with fury, grief, pride, and ultimately grace. Heston didn't just act, he embodied the very essence of the era's masculinity and moral conflict. Surrounding him were titans of their time: Stephen Boyd, Jack Hawkins, Haya Harareet, Hugh Griffith, and many others whose legacies, like the sands of the Colosseum, have been touched by time. The film went on to win 11 Academy Awards, a record that stood unmatched until Titanic, 1997, and The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, 2003, tied it decades later. But awards only tell part of the story. What truly endures is how Ben-Hur made people feel: the adrenaline of the race, the heartbreak of betrayal, the quiet miracle of grace. And yet, as we look back today, the grandeur of Ben-Hur is tinged with nostalgia. Most of the faces that brought this colossal vision to life have since faded into history. They lived in golden light, and now rest in silent shadows. In this video, we honor them, not just as actors, but as storytellers who gave their all to a film that still echoes through time. Charlton Heston, the immovable star behind the wheels of Ben-Hur. When people think of Ben-Hur, the first image that comes to mind is Charlton Heston, eyes blazing beneath the desert sun, hands tight on the reins of a thundering chariot. He wasn't just the lead actor, he was the film. Without Heston, Ben-Hur might have been just another historical epic. With him, it became immortal. Born in 1923 in Illinois, Charlton Heston was already a rising star before taking on Judah Ben-Hur. Known for his commanding presence and booming voice, he seemed carved from the same granite as the characters he played: Moses in the Ten Commandments, El Cid, and eventually, even Michelangelo. But Ben-Hur was his crown jewel. The role earned him the Academy Award for Best Actor and catapulted him to legendary status. His performance balanced searing intensity with subtle vulnerability, a man broken by betrayal, reborn through suffering. Off-screen, Heston was as complex as his roles. A passionate advocate for civil rights in the 1960s, he marched with Martin Luther King Jr., yet later in life became a staunch defender of conservative values and famously led the NRA. These contradictions made him a polarizing figure, but one thing was indisputable: he believed deeply in principles, whether or not the world agreed with them. Heston passed away in 2008 at the age of 84, after battling Alzheimer's disease. His death marked more than the loss of a Hollywood icon, it was the fading of a cinematic era. In a time when digital effects and anti-heroes dominate the screen, Heston represented something elemental: grandeur, conviction, and the belief that a single man could change the course of fate. Judah Ben-Hur may have found redemption on the dusty roads of Jerusalem, but Charlton Heston found immortality in the hearts of millions. Stephen Boyd, the friend turned foe, and a tragedy in silence. In Ben-Hur, no character cuts deeper than Masala, the childhood friend who becomes a ruthless enemy. And no actor delivered betrayal with such icy charisma as Stephen Boyd. With piercing eyes and a soldier's posture, Boyd turned Masala into more than a villain. He became the emotional counterweight to Judah Ben-Hur, a man who chose power over loyalty, and paid the price. Born William Miller in Northern Ireland in 1931, Stephen Boyd began his career with humble roots, eventually climbing the ranks of British cinema before catching Hollywood's attention. His casting as Masala wasn't just fortunate, it was electric. The tension between Boyd and Heston on screen was palpable, and rumors have long swirled that Wyler directed the early scenes between the two men with an undercurrent of repressed affection, something Boyd embraced subtly and skillfully. While Heston was the storm, Boyd was the steel. Calculated, charming, and ultimately destroyed by his own ambition. His performance remains one of the most compelling portrayals of a tragic antagonist in classic cinema. Off-camera, Boyd was known as private, complex, and sometimes enigmatic. Unlike many of his contemporaries, he never married and shunned Hollywood's social circuit. He continued acting into the 1970s, with roles in The Fall of the Roman Empire and Fantastic Voyage, but none matched the fire he brought to Ben-Hur. Tragically, Boyd died suddenly of a heart attack in 1977, while playing golf, at just 45 years old. His death shocked fans and robbed cinema of a talent that still had so much more to give. Today, when we revisit Ben-Hur, it's Masala's cold smile and final broken breath that remind us how fine the line is between greatness and downfall, and how unforgettable Stephen Boyd truly was. Jack Hawkins, the stoic Roman with a wounded soul. In Ben-Hur, the role of Quintus Arrius, the Roman consul who saves Judah from slavery and adopts him as his son, offered a powerful contrast to the brutality of the empire. And it was Jack Hawkins who infused the character with a quiet dignity, creating a figure not of conquest, but of compassion. In a film filled with thunder and spectacle, Hawkins gave us a moment of humanity. Born in London in 1910, Jack Hawkins was a stage-trained actor who transitioned into film with effortless authority. By the 1950s, he had become one of Britain's most respected leading men, often cast as upright military officers or noble figures of moral strength. His gravitas, deep voice, and natural command made him an ideal choice for Arrius, a man of power changed by witnessing the resilience and nobility of a slave. Though his screen time in Ben-Hur is limited compared to Heston or Boyd, Hawkins' presence left a lasting impression. Arrius is the bridge between Judah's lowest point and his rise, not just in status, but in identity. Hawkins played him with restraint, portraying a man weathered by war, tired of cruelty, and silently yearning for meaning. That depth made the adoption scene feel not like a plot twist, but a moment of true emotional rebirth. But off-screen, Hawkins faced a quiet tragedy. In the early 1960s, he was diagnosed with throat cancer, and in 1966, he underwent a laryngectomy that left him unable to speak. Despite this, he continued acting, using dubbed voices in post-production, a testament to his unbreakable spirit. He died in 1973 at the age of 62. Jack Hawkins never shouted for attention. Like Quintus Arrius, he let his actions speak, leaving behind a body of work that whispered strength, and in Ben-Hur, a role that anchored the film's emotional turn with noble restraint. Haya Harareet, the silent grace of a forgotten star. She was the beating heart of Ben-Hur, yet today, few remember her name. Haya Harareet, the Israeli actress who played Esther, Judah's great love, delivered a performance filled with quiet resilience, emotional depth, and understated beauty. In a film dominated by war, revenge, and political betrayal, Esther was the soul. Born in Haifa, then part of British Mandate Palestine, in 1931, Harareet was a rare presence in Hollywood at the time. Elegant, dark-eyed, and deeply expressive, she was chosen by director William Wyler after an extensive search for someone who could bring both strength and tenderness to the role. And she did just that. Her chemistry with Charlton Heston gave Ben-Hur its emotional core. More than a love interest, Esther was Judah's anchor, his reminder of mercy, forgiveness, and hope. Despite the global success of Ben-Hur, Harareet's Hollywood career never flourished. She appeared in only a handful of films afterward, including The Secret Partner and Journey Beneath the Desert, before quietly stepping away from the spotlight. Unlike many of her contemporaries, she didn't chase fame. Perhaps she sensed that her place in film history had already been secured. In her later years, Harareet lived a life of privacy, far from the glitz of the industry. She passed away in 2021 at the age of 89, her death a quiet note in the headlines, yet for fans of Ben-Hur, it marked the end of a legacy. She was the last surviving credited cast member from the film's major roles. Haya Harareet didn't need dozens of films to leave her mark. With Ben-Hur, she offered a single, luminous performance that still stirs hearts, proof that sometimes, one role is enough to echo through time. Hugh Griffith, the unlikely sheik who stole the scene. In a film defined by epic battles and inner turmoil, there was one character who brought unexpected levity and warmth, Sheikh Ilderim, the Arab horseman with a shrewd eye and a generous heart. And it was Hugh Griffith, the Welsh actor with a booming laugh and soulful eyes, who turned what could have been a caricature into one of Ben-Hur's most endearing figures. Born in 1912 in Anglesey, Wales, Hugh Griffith trained at RADA and served in World War II before launching his acting career. Known for his rich voice and unpredictable energy, he brought a magnetic eccentricity to every role he touched. But it was Ben-Hur that gave him international recognition, and the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. As Sheikh Ilderim, Griffith was unforgettable. Swathed in robes, eyes gleaming with mischief, he formed an unlikely alliance with Judah Ben-Hur and became instrumental in the climactic chariot race. His scenes burst with color and character, providing not just comic relief, but genuine emotional texture. He was bold, cunning, loyal, and thoroughly human. Audiences couldn't help but love him. However, Griffith's personal life was far less steady. Behind the scenes, he struggled with chronic alcoholism, a battle that affected his health and led to erratic behavior on film sets in the years that followed. His once flourishing career began to fade, though he continued to act in supporting roles throughout the 1960s and 70s. He died in 1980 at the age of 67, largely out of the spotlight he once commanded. But his Oscar-winning turn in Ben-Hur remains a testament to his talent, a performance filled with warmth, vitality, and a spark of madness that made Sheikh Ilderim unforgettable. In a film of kings and warriors, Hugh Griffith gave us a rogue with heart, and in doing so, stole scenes and hearts alike. Martha Scott, the mother who endured the unimaginable. In Ben-Hur, few characters suffer as deeply or love as fiercely as Miriam, Judah's mother. Imprisoned, cast into leprosy, and separated from her children, Miriam's journey is one of quiet agony, and it was Martha Scott who carried that pain with unforgettable grace. Born in 1912 in Jamesport, Missouri, Martha Scott began her career on stage before transitioning into film. She earned an Academy Award nomination for her very first screen role in Our Town, 1940, where she also played a mother, a role she would return to time and again with uncanny emotional precision. In Ben-Hur, she was cast as Miriam, a role that required not just age and empathy, but a deep sense of endurance. She portrayed a woman robbed of dignity and home, yet unbroken in spirit. Though not a central figure in the plot's action, Scott's performance was pivotal. Her scenes, especially her reunion with Judah, cloaked in shame and hiding her affliction, brought a sobering emotional weight to the film. In a story filled with spectacle, she reminded us of the human cost of vengeance and empire. Off-screen, Martha Scott was known for her professionalism and poise. She had a long and steady career in film, television, and theater, and even co-founded a production company. In later years, she often played maternal roles, bringing the same sincerity and warmth that made her beloved to generations of audiences. She passed away in 2003 at the age of 90, having quietly built a career that spanned 6 decades. While others chased stardom, Martha Scott gave us something more lasting, characters that felt real, grounded, and deeply human. In Ben-Hur, as Miriam, she showed us a mother's unbreakable love. And in doing so, she left a mark that no chariot's will could ever erase. Cathy O'Donnell, the tragic beauty behind Tirza's eyes. In the grand mosaic of Ben-Hur, one of its most delicate and heartbreaking pieces is Tirza, Judah's younger sister, whose innocence is shattered by betrayal and suffering. Portraying her with haunting fragility was Cathy O'Donnell, an actress whose own life story mirrored the quiet sorrow she so often brought to the screen. Born in Steele in Alabama in 1923, Cathy O'Donnell began acting after being discovered by Samuel Goldwyn, who saw in her a luminous, understated beauty ideal for dramatic roles. She quickly gained recognition for her deeply human performance in The Best Years of Our Lives, 1946, and became known for her quiet emotional depth. In Ben-Hur, O'Donnell's Tirza is a picture of youthful grace gradually stripped bare by imprisonment and disease. From a radiant girl in the opening scenes to a silent, veiled figure in the leper colony, her transformation was devastating. Without ever overacting, O'Donnell conveyed the agony of a life unraveling. Her final scenes, wordless, sunlit, and almost ghostly, are among the most poignant in the film. Off-screen, Cathy O'Donnell led a private life. She married screenwriter Robert Wyler, the brother of Ben-Hur director William Wyler, in 1948. Her career slowed afterward, with Ben-Hur being one of her final screen appearances. Tragically, just 10 years after the film's release, O'Donnell died of cancer in 1970, on her 47th birthday. She left behind a short but impactful legacy, a filmography filled with roles that required a tender but resilient touch. In Ben-Hur, Cathy O'Donnell was the gentle thread that connected Judah's past to his pain, and ultimately to his healing. She didn't need grand speeches. A glance, a tear, a silent smile, Cathy O'Donnell said more with those than most ever could. Sam Jaffe, the loyal steward with a philosopher's heart. In the world of Ben-Hur, where betrayal, revenge, and redemption swirl in epic proportions, the character of Simonides offers something rare: steadfast loyalty. As the devoted steward of the Hur household, Sam Jaffe gave Simonides not only wisdom and dignity, but a soul, one that quietly endured suffering and emerged even stronger. Born in 1891 in New York City, Sam Jaffe had one of the most eclectic backgrounds in Hollywood. Before acting, he was an engineer, a teacher, a writer, and even a principal. His intelligence always shone through in his performances, and in Ben-Hur, that brilliance was channeled into the quietly noble Simonides, a man crippled by Roman cruelty, yet unbroken in loyalty to the Hur family. Jaffe's portrayal was filled with nuance. He showed us a servant who was never servile, a man whose silence carried weight, and whose devotion came not from duty, but love. His scenes with Esther and Judah were touching, underscoring the familial bonds that time, distance, and suffering could never erase. Outside of Ben-Hur, Jaffe had a rich and varied career. He received an Oscar nomination for The Asphalt Jungle, 1950, and starred in classics like Gunga Din and Lost Horizon. Later, he even played the kindly scientist in The Day the Earth Stood Still. But his talents extended beyond acting. He was a mathematician, a linguist, and a deep thinker, often challenging Hollywood's superficiality with his intellectual rigor. Sam Jaffe passed away in 1984 at the age of 93, having lived through, and contributed to, the evolution of cinema from silent film to science fiction. In Ben-Hur, he offered something both grounding and profound, a reminder that in a world consumed by vengeance, loyalty still matters. His legacy wasn't loud, but like Simonides himself, it was deeply rooted and impossible to forget. Frank Thring, the cold voice of judgment in a crown of authority. In the midst of Ben-Hur's sweeping spiritual themes and emotional upheavals stands one of history's most controversial figures, Pontius Pilate. In the film, he's not a villain in the traditional sense, but a chilling symbol of indifference and power. Frank Thring, with his commanding presence and cold, articulate delivery, made Pilate unforgettable, a man draped in silk and gilt. Born in Melbourne, Australia, in 1926, Thring came from theatrical royalty, His father was one of the most powerful figures in Australian cinema. Trained on the stage and blessed with a deep, resonant voice and piercing eyes, Thring had a magnetic intensity that set him apart from other character actors. Ben-Hur gave him the perfect vehicle to display that still menace. His portrayal of Pilot was calm, poised, and dispassionate, almost surgical. Thring didn't yell or scowl. He weighed every word, every pause. His delivery of Pilot's infamous, "It is as you say," carried the weight of centuries. In a film filled with physical struggle and spiritual conflict, Thring's Pilot was the chilling hand of bureaucracy, deciding fates not with malice, but with indifference. Beyond Ben-Hur, Frank Thring became known for playing imperial and villainous roles, including King Herod in King of Kings, 1961, and Aella in The Vikings, 1958. His flamboyant style and theatrical flair extended into his personal life, where he embraced eccentricity and often challenged social norms, especially in a conservative era. Thring passed away in 1994 at the age of 68, his health long impacted by chronic illness. He never achieved household name fame, but for those who remember Ben-Hur, his performance remains seared in memory, a masterclass in restrained menace. In the hands of a lesser actor, Pilot could have been forgettable. In Thring's, he became unforgettable. George Relf, the emperor in the twilight of his career. He appears briefly, yet with the weight of an empire behind him. As Tiberius Caesar, the aging ruler of Rome, George Relf brought to Ben-Hur a touch of imperial solemnity, representing not just the head of a vast dominion, but the final link in a long, oppressive chain of power. It would be the last performance of his career. Born in 1888 in Cullercoats, England, George Relf began acting in the early 1900s, with a career that spanned stage, film, and even silent cinema. He served in World War I and returned to the theater, where he established himself as a refined, classical actor. Though never a major film star, Relf was respected for his poise and precision, traits that made him a natural fit for portraying historical and aristocratic figures. In Ben-Hur, Relf's Tiberius is more symbol than character. He sits atop the Roman hierarchy, distant yet decisive, ultimately rewarding Judah for saving Arius. The role required very little dialogue, but much presence, and Relf delivered that with quiet majesty. You feel the centuries of rule behind his posture, the exhaustion of a man who sees empires not as glories, but burdens. Tragically, George Relf died shortly after filming Wrapped in 1960, at the age of 71. Ben-Hur was his final screen appearance, and fittingly so. It was a film about endings and new beginnings, and his character marked the final political step in Judah Ben-Hur's return to power before his spiritual transformation began. Though not a household name, Relf's contribution to Ben-Hur is another example of how even the smallest roles, when performed with dignity and truth, can add essential color to a masterpiece. Finlay Currie, the wise man who never lost faith. In the opening scenes of Ben-Hur, the presence of the Magi adds a mystical, almost prophetic layer to the story's beginning. Among them stands Balthasar, the aged wise man who followed the star to Bethlehem, and later follows the path of Christ with unwavering devotion. Portraying him with gentleness and spiritual conviction was Finlay Currie, a veteran Scottish actor whose long career culminated in this quiet yet profound role. Born in Edinburgh in 1878, Currie was a performer of the old world. He began on the stage, moved into silent film, and by the 1940s had become a fixture in British and Hollywood cinema. His commanding white beard, sonorous voice, and soulful eyes made him a natural choice for roles of religious or patriarchal authority, none more fitting than Balthasar. In Ben-Hur, Currie's Balthasar is not just a symbol of faith but a bridge between the story's human vengeance and its divine message. He appears when hope seems distant, offering quiet reminders of compassion and destiny. His scenes are few, but each one carries moral weight, especially his final appearance at the crucifixion, where his lifelong journey comes to an end not in spectacle, but in silent awe. Off-screen, Finlay Currie was known for his humility and professionalism. Despite his age, he continued acting into the 1960s, appearing in films like People Will Talk and Ivanhoe. He passed away in 1968 at the age of 90, leaving behind a filmography filled with wisdom and gravitas. In Ben-Hur, Curry gave voice to the film's soul. He reminded us that even in a world torn by war and revenge, there are still those who choose faith, who walk gently through violence, and who believe in a truth beyond the chariots and swords. André Morel, the Roman officer who measured power with reason. Among the many figures of authority in Ben-Hur, one of the more understated, and unexpectedly humane, is Sextus, the Roman military officer who receives Judah upon his return to Judea. Played with stoic intelligence by André Morel, Sextus represents a rare figure in the Roman ranks, a man of law, but not cruelty, of power, but not arrogance. Born in London in 1909, André Morel was a classically trained British actor, best known for his stage work with the Old Vic and Royal Shakespeare Company. His transition to film and television brought him into historical epics and mystery dramas alike, often playing characters of refined authority. In Ben-Hur, that refinement added a crucial shade to the Roman Empire's portrayal. Not all officers were Messala. Sextus isn't central to the plot, but Morel gave the role a thoughtful presence. His brief scenes with Heston are loaded with subtext. He's a man who knows the brutality of Rome, but who also senses Judah's deeper character. He obeys orders, yes, but with an undercurrent of unease. In a story often painted in black and white, Morel offered a moment of gray. Outside of Ben-Hur, Morel had a rich career in British film and TV, notably appearing in The Bridge on the River Kwai, Quatermass and The Pit, and Barry Lyndon. He was married to actress Joan Greenwood, and was widely respected for his dignified performances and gentle demeanor. He passed away in 1978 at the age of 69, leaving behind a body of work that often placed him just off-center, but never out of focus. In Ben-Hur, Morel reminded us that even within empires there are those who serve with restraint. His Sextus didn't need to shout, he simply observed, questioned, and let the truth speak for itself. Ben-Hur, 1959, was more than a cinematic event. It was a resurrection of epic storytelling, crafted with grit, grandeur, and faith. But as the dust of its legendary chariot race settles, what remains isn't just the spectacle. It's the people. The faces. The lives now gone, who once breathed life into this timeless myth. One by one, the stars who gave their souls to this film have departed. Charlton Heston, the indomitable heart of the story. Stephen Boyd, the haunting, conflicted Messala. Haya Harareet, whose quiet strength anchored Judah's redemption. Jack Hawkins, Hugh Griffith, Martha Scott, Kathy O'Donnell, Sam Jaffe, Frank Thring, George Relf, Finlay Curry, and André Morel. 12 names, 12 lives, each contributing a vital chord to this symphony of struggle, forgiveness, and faith. Their stories did not end when the cameras stopped rolling. Some lived long lives, others were taken too soon. Some battled illness and personal demons, others faded gracefully into the background of time. But all of them, in those few precious hours on screen, left something behind that cannot be erased. Cinema has the power to preserve, to transcend. In Ben-Hur, these actors are forever galloping across the arena, whispering prayers in dark corners, watching stars rise over Jerusalem. They speak to us from another time, but their performances still feel alive, still sting, still inspire. And so, we remember them not with sadness, but with reverence. Their light may have dimmed in the world we walk, but it shines eternal on the silver screen. Ben-Hur was their legacy. And we are its keepers,